Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you get a lot of value out of this session and enjoy the content, whether you're participating live or watching this on demand at a later date. If you're new to design thinking, you have definitely come to the right place. If you're not familiar with Spring2 Innovation and this is your first time joining us, we're a design thinking firm focused on removing barriers for our clients and students to help them understand their end clients better and to generally become more innovative. We help our clients do this through coaching, consulting, and training. And if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website or shoot us an email or message us on social media. And for more design thinking thought leadership, you can also check out our past webinars, our YouTube channel, or our blog. There's a lot of great content there. Okay, let's get started. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about how to build resilience. And we're also going to talk about how to identify opportunities in times of uncertainty using design thinking. The way organizations and leaders lead in times of uncertainty is critical to performance. Those who accept and embrace change are going to be better equipped to identify opportunities during challenging times, and those that don't are likely going to fail or struggle. Nilufer Erdebil is our expert today. She's the founder and CEO of Spring2 Innovation. She's a 2014 recipient of the Ottawa Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award and a recipient of the Leadership Award from Women in Communications and Technology. She's also a TEDx Ottawa speaker, and you can check out her TEDx talk called Design Thinking for Complex Environments on YouTube, and we'll also drop the link to that in the chat box. And so with that, I'll pass it over to you, Nil.
Thanks, Jessica. Welcome, everybody. So today we're talking about using design thinking for resilience. I don't know if you guys realize it, but resilience and fear are really closely related. And as kids, we're actually born very fearless. Just look at any child learning to walk or any child that's trying out downhill skiing as they plow straight down the hill, fall, get back up, and keep plowing straight down the hill. But as we get older, fear starts to set in, and we need to start to muster up some courage in order to do the things that were easy for us at one point. And through mustering up that courage and overcoming our fears, we become more resilient. A few years ago, I actually took my kids to a swimming pool in the summertime. It was an outdoor swimming pool, and there were two diving boards, a lower one and a high diving board. And I remembered that I loved jumping off of diving boards when I was a kid. And so as the kids and I were swimming, one of them asked if they could go on the lower diving board. And I said, yeah, for sure. And he jumped and jumped, and he was having a great time. And then he comes back and asks me if I can go in with him and jump off the diving board. And as he asked me that, I had this feeling in the bottom of my stomach, like it was nerves and butterflies. And I was trying to think, okay, I've done this so many times before when I was a kid. I'm gonna go for it. And so I went, climbed the short ladder to the diving board, went to the edge, had more butterflies, but I jumped. And it was tons of fun, and I loved it. And I kind of felt proud of myself, even though it was the low diving board. And I went back to swimming. And then a few minutes later, the same kid wanted to actually go off the high diving board. And so as he asked me, I kind of got butterflies for him. And I thought, okay, no, this is really good. It'll have him experience something different, and he can overcome his fears, although I don't know if he had any fears. And we'd already been watching a number of kids go up the ladder for the high diving board, and then for the most part, go to the very edge and jump off. We also saw some of the kids that would climb up the ladder, go to the very edge, look down, turn around, and climb back down. And as I was watching them climb back down, I was thinking to myself, yeah, there's no way I climb back down. I just jump. And so I watched my son go up the ladder, go to the edge, and jump. And he did it so easily. I was like, oh yeah, that looks really easy. And he did this for a couple of times and then came back again and asked me if I wanted to jump off the high diving board. And this time, my stomach had an even bigger pain, and I thought, oh my God, I can't jump off the high diving board. And I thought to myself, why can't I jump off the high diving board? All these little kids are doing it. And so I went in towards the high diving board, waited for my turn, climbed up the ladder, went to the very edge of the diving board. I looked down and I looked down and I looked down and I turned around and I climbed back down the stairs. And as I went back into the pool, my kids are asking, why didn't I jump? And I said, it looks like it's too far down. And so the sun that had already gone down convinced me to try back one more time. And so I went up the ladder, went to the very edge of the diving board. I looked down again, and those butterflies were stronger than ever. And then I heard somebody yelling at me to say, and they were yelling at me saying, look at the buildings across the street. And so it took me a second to realize it's one of the lifeguards, and I'm still looking down. And so I changed my focus. I looked across at the buildings. I looked down briefly again and then looked back across at the buildings, and I jumped in. And it seemed like forever in the air, but once I hit, it felt really good to have done it. And I realized how much courage it had taken me, how much fear I had, and how much courage it had taken me. And I realized we do this a lot in our daily lives without realizing it, where something scares us. And if we're able to overcome that fear, then we become more resilient and can tackle on harder, more difficult problems later on. And so as I started breaking down what was going on during this whole swimming diving board incident and building resilience, I realized that you need to start out small. And so starting out with a small diving board was really great for me. And then it's recognizing that there is a fear and then mustering up the courage to do it anyway, and having support along the way. And so for me, the support was my kids and the lifeguards that were encouraging me, and then the goal aspect of it. So my goal was to jump off of the diving board, but it was also looking ahead rather than down. And so making sure that there is a goal as you're building up resilience, and then celebrating the successes along the way. So celebrating jumping off of the small diving board and celebrating jumping off of the high diving board. And it's not as quick in real life in other areas of our lives. And so we really need to pull back and think about what we're doing and how we're going about it. And resilience has a lot to do with conquering fear. Once you conquer fears as a person on your own and as an organization, you can start to develop more resilience. And resilience creates room to make the healthy risks that you need to be able to move forward and develop the future of your organization. So without taking those risks, you're going to find yourself climbing back down the ladder. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and uncertainty creates fear as well. And there's also a lot of confusion too. And so if you guys take a look at this picture, it's for a condo for use of the elevator, and it says maximum occupants 2, which is all good and well. But if you look at the picture, there's actually 3 occupants in the picture in the picture for taking the elevator. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of mixed messages, there's a lot of unknowns. And so we need to figure out how to create clarity. And so as Spring2 Innovation, we help clients get clarity on their challenges, and especially in large organizations. And it's the same for individuals too. We help individuals get clarity on what they're afraid of and how to overcome those fears and challenges. So we help reduce the confusion and help understand what and how others are seeing issues and challenges. If I think back to some of the participants in our design thinking certification program, we actually had one participant that chose to reevaluate how they do planning. And so in this particular organization, there were a number of planning initiatives that had different timelines, involved different people. And so in order to understand the planning cycle, she brought in all the people that were involved in it and then created a plan for planning. And I know that sounds really funny, but it provided a lot of clarity and certainty to people so that they were able to overcome their fears as they were going forward, and it reduced the confusion quite a bit. And so as we're looking to overcome resilience, or to create resilience through overcoming fears, there's a couple of things that we need to think about. And so in order to conquer fears, we need to understand our fears. And so empathy for yourself, understanding yourself a little bit better, and then empathy for those around you too. Who are the other people that you're working with? Who are the other people in your life? What are their fears? What are their values? What are their challenges? And keeping in mind that we're still in a pandemic and we're all living different lives at home, in our work environments. It's all really different realities. And there's a lot of fears about the unknowns, whether it's health, finances, freedom, normalcy. There's so many fears around it, so many unknowns, uncertainties, and things that were important before are no longer important, and things that weren't important before are super important. Like I never thought I'd try to have that 6-foot social distancing aspect of it, and now it's a big factor in my life as I go outside of my home. And so keep in mind that resilience is about overcoming those fears, and in order to overcome those fears, you need to understand what those fears are. We can use empathy to understand how the values and fears of our employees and our clients have changed. And so we still want to collaborate, we still want to socialize, but then at the same time, we don't want to get sick and have some of our relatives, especially the elderly ones, get sick too. At the same time, we need to be able to homeschool our kids from home. And so we need to use empathy to get inside the minds of the people that we're working with, the people that we're living with, so that we can understand how they're thinking, what their values are, what their fears are, and help them overcome them. And we've actually helped some organizations within the federal government understand their employees better so that they can make their lives better, even during the pandemic, especially during the pandemic, actually. And so think about what are some fears you have right now. And I'm actually gonna open it up for you guys to comment in the chat. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. What are some of the fears that you currently have? For example, I'm afraid of getting sick, and this actually leads to other issues too, and other fears. Like I have a fear of grocery shopping now, so I try to get stuff delivered as much as possible. I sometimes have this fear of seeing friends if I know that they've been less socially distanced, and sometimes I'm even afraid of biking because there's so many people around. And so I'd love to hear from you. So I've heard contracting COVID at work. Yeah, that's a big fear. And fear of growing business, fear of making work mistakes during COVID-19 as well too. Yeah. And then fear of job insecurity and failing. Yeah, there's a lot of fears that we have right now that are even more than before, and recognize them is the first step to becoming resilient. And so we're talking about resilience, but what is resilience? And so resilience has many definitions, and I'm going to read you some of them, and then I'll ask you which one resonates most with you. And so for what is resilience? Resilience can be described as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, and so through toughness. Resilience is built through hardship. Resilience is the ability to be able to spring back into shape. And the fourth definition is from the American Psychologists Association. Resilience is a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant source of stress. And so keep those definitions in mind. And I'm actually going to open up a poll and launch it. And this is all anonymous, so I'd love it if you guys could vote on the definition of resilience that resonates most with you. And so is it the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties? Is it built through hardship? Is it the ability to spring back into shape? Or is it a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant source of stress? I'm going to share the results with you. And so most of you, over 53% have said that it's the psychologist's definition as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant source of stress. I love that. And then the second one is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And then it's the ability to spring back into shape, and then built through hardship is the fourth one. Awesome. Thank you. I love that. Just going to close up the poll for a second. So there's resilience, and resilience is created through overcoming fears, through being able to bounce back. It's to be able to recover from tragedy, threats. And so there's also something called anti-fragility. And that's the concept that things are going to get stronger with the increased pressure and increased force. And there's a phenomenal book that was written about 10 years ago on anti-fragility by Nassim Taleb. And it goes into a lot of detail in terms of how threats are an opportunity to be able to create an even stronger environment, a stronger organization, and more strength within ourselves too. And innovation and anti-fragility go together hand in hand. So innovation occurs when there's pressure that's applied to a situation, either from customers and clients, the market, or other internal forces. And the internal pressure can also be from leadership, strong leaders that want change. And then for us right now, the current environment is a really big pressure externally that is an opportunity to become anti-fragile. That is to be able to be even stronger than we were before. And innovative organizations are rewarding innovation, and they're less likely to punish for failure. And so the culture is more collaborative, with people trying to figure out how to make ideas work rather than thinking, will this work? And so what we want to do is think about this as an opportunity to become anti-fragile ourselves and within our organizations. And the name of the book is called Anti-Fragility. So I'm actually going to open it up for another poll too. And so I'm just going to switch it over. Are you seeing what we're going through as an opportunity? Let me just launch the poll. So if you don't mind, are you seeing opportunities in this environment? And so it's a yes or no. And so this could be in your personal life or in your work environment too. And so these are really great and fascinating results too. And so 96% of you feel like there's opportunities in this environment. That's amazing. Just going to stop that share and close up the poll. And you're absolutely right. There's tons of opportunities right now. It's just being able to recognize that we all have fears, we have uncertainties, but then what are the opportunities for us and for the people around us and for our end clients from understanding those fears? So resilience is actually developed while overcoming adversity as well. And in order to be able to develop that resiliency, we need to be able to understand what our end clients are going through, their challenges, their values, their goals, and their fears. And for thinking about resiliency for ourselves, the same thing too. What are our challenges as we're going through this change? What are our values, goals, and fears? And then through understanding our end clients, we can also determine when and where we can pivot. And so do we need to reframe? Do we need to shift direction? And we can't do that. We can't do the same things that we were doing before. And so in order to make sure that we're going in the right direction, we need to be able to understand the goals, challenges, values, and fears that our clients have shifted to. And resilience is built as organizations pivot into new areas and adopt new ways of doing things and keep moving forward. And that's the key part, is keep moving forward. And remember, as part of developing resiliency, you want to remember your past successes and know that you're going to succeed once again. So in terms of moving forward, we want to make sure that we have goals in place. And you can start out small, like we talked about earlier. Start out small and then build bigger and bigger goals, or have a larger goal and break it up into smaller pieces. And keep thinking about what's the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and focus on the things that you can control. Ask lots of questions, question assumptions, ask what the organizations can help with, ask what you can help with, and look for opportunities. And so the goal is, think about the goal with the why. Why is my goal important? And why do I do what I do? And that's going to really help you stay focused along the way too. There's a reason that you have that goal. There's a reason you do what you do. And so focus on that as you're establishing your goals. And so with why, goals, and moving forward too, think back to who are the people you're impacting and creating value for. How do your goals impact people? And what's the outcome you're trying to create? And so this is the people side of what we want to do. And empathy is bigger than ever. And that's part of human nature. And public service especially is about helping people. Connecting what you do with the impact on people and to citizens is really huge and impactful for not only developing resilience, setting goals, but it's also amazing for motivation too. Is if you have goals in place, understand why you have those goals in place, it's a lot easier to move forward. And as we're moving forward, make sure that you're celebrating successes along the way. So think about initially when you set out your goal, what does success look like? And then break your goal into smaller pieces and celebrate those small successes along the way. And then think about your past successes. Were there things that you actually overcame in the past? And then what traits allowed you to be successful? What traits allowed you to overcome challenges in the past? And make sure that you have that top of your mind as you're celebrating successes and as you're trying to overcome adversity too, in order to be able to create resilience. As part of building resilience too, there's a huge prototyping and experimentation component to this. And so you want to be able to achieve success in the current environment. And the best way to do that is through prototyping and experimentation. And it's a way to de-risk new opportunities. So for example, let's say you were trying to figure out how will elevators work as folks go back to work, or how will people keep 6 feet apart? It really helps to be able to prototype that and experiment with that in your work environment. There's all sorts of prototyping that's going on right now. Schools are prototyping, whether it's universities or elementary schools. We're actually seeing education being prototyped on the fly. I'm always fascinated to see what's going to be coming up for the fall and how schools are going to be run. We've done a lot of work with organizations and helping them pre-COVID understand where they need to go and how they can prototype and experiment. And there was one particular organization that we helped them get a little bit more clarity on and common understanding to create multiple prototypes on for what their ideal environment would look like for working. And so as we got them to prototype and experiment, we found that they wanted shared space and enclosed working groups so that people can work in groups together for longer periods of time. What was really fascinating is that people thought that they couldn't come up with prototypes that they would agree on, but at the very end, when they did the prototyping, they were all part of it and they were doing the experimentation, they loved the process and they came up with ideas that were similar and then selected the best one. And that was great pre-COVID. And now the ideal environment has changed and we need to start doing that once again too. With design thinking and with resilience, there's a huge mindset component to stuff. And there's two types of mindsets that we're going to talk about today. It's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And a mindset allows you to be able to have those skills like being able to build courage for yourself and within organizations. And so we actually help break down complex problems in organizations and help people see things from different perspectives. And we also help people solve problems. And that's part of the value that we bring, but it's also that mindset component of it is learning more in order to be able to help create better solutions. And design thinking is about building in that growth mindset, creating the space to discover and learn about our end users and also about ourselves too. And so some of you guys might not be as familiar with a fixed and growth mindset. And so let me just run you through some of the characteristics of fixed and growth mindset. And so fixed mindset is people with fixed mindset believe that intelligence is static and that success is about being more gifted than others. They believe that failure does measure you and that effort is for those who can't make it on talent. Fixed mindset is also about avoiding challenges and then ignoring negative feedback. And people with fixed mindset feel threatened by other success. With growth mindset, the people with a growth mindset believe that abilities can be developed. Failure doesn't define you. And to be able to embrace challenges. And then they also believe that intelligence can be developed, and they can learn from criticism. They also find that there are lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And they also really like engaging with error. So learning from error and then correcting it going forward. It's funny because they actually have started teaching mindset in elementary schools now too. And the first time I actually saw this growth mindset in my own kids was when I took them to a Lego exhibit a couple years ago. And I'm a big Lego fan, and so of course they've become Lego fans too. And there was a competition there on bridge building. And so what you would have to do is you'd be given a set of Duplo blocks, which are larger Lego blocks, and you would have to create a bridge and see how much weight it could withstand. And so the team with a bridge that could withstand the most amount of weight won. And so we got our bricks and the kids started building the bridge. And then the engineer and me came out and I started talking about fault lines. And I tried to explain to them, but they didn't quite get it. And so they kept building away, and it was, they were having tons of fun, and I really loved that they were having fun. And then our time came up and we watched the other teams. And 2 teams right before us, the kids put their bridge up, and then they put a 5-pound weight on it, and the bridge collapsed. And the 2 kids were crying. And I felt really bad for them. And then I thought, oh my God, my kids are gonna cry too. And then the team right after them was this team that you see the picture of. And so I'm not even sure, I think it was over 100 pounds that their bridge was able to withstand, which is phenomenal. And then it was our turn. And so we were able to carefully pick up the bridge and put it on the podium there. And honestly, it wasn't even 5 seconds before the bridge fell apart. And so I'm looking at the kids, and one of them's like, oh, I see what you mean about fault lines. And he didn't say interesting. He said, oh, okay. And then they just went back to their seats. And I thought in my head, they're not crying. That's a good sign. They're recognizing that there was an issue with their design. And I'm pretty sure that if they do it again, they're not going to end up having fault lines in their bridge. So it was a really great opportunity for them to learn resilience, but also about the growth mindset too. And it was nice knowing that they actually had it. And so for us, how can we ensure that we're developing the growth mindset for ourselves and within our own organizations? And that growth mindset is about the power of not yet. And so we want to look for ways to plan for a better future. And we want to make sure that we're defining that path into the future. And you can also change your mindset too. So you don't have to stay in a fixed mindset. If you don't want to stay in growth mindset, you don't have to stay in a growth mindset either. Every time you overcome difficult situations, you get better at having that growth mindset. And it's also a lot about being curious and thinking of challenges as opportunities. And there's a lot of companies that you're starting to see bring out new products and new services. For example, Vistaprint, who's been known for business cards, have started customizing face masks for people. There's organizations, restaurants here within Ottawa that are using other restaurants' kitchens so that there's 2 or 3 companies sharing the same kitchen so that they don't have to use the same space. I'm going to do one last poll for you guys. And I would love to know if you feel like you have a fixed or a growth mindset. And so sometimes it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. Certain jobs in life, you want to make sure that the person has a fixed mindset. Certain jobs in life, you want to make sure that the person has growth mindset. In order to overcome resilience, growth mindset helps out a lot more. And even if you don't have natural growth mindset, you can develop it. And this is a great time to be developing it because in a way we're kind of being forced to develop that growth mindset. Okay, I am just going to end the poll here. Sorry. Oh, I got my cursor back. Okay, here we go. And so 86% of you feel like you have a growth mindset, and 18% feel like they have a fixed. Yeah, and one is more natural to us than the other, but it's something that we can develop. So we can continue to develop growth mindset. And as we're going through all the changes that we're going through, we're naturally starting to exhibit some opportunities to develop that growth mindset. So another component of developing resiliency is the ability to improvise. And so doing what we can with what we already have. And so it's really fascinating. UPS is actually really great at letting their employees improvise. And when I think of UPS, I think of brown, like brown trucks, brown uniforms. And their motto is that do whatever it takes to deliver packages on time. No one tells them what to do or how to do it, but they have the capacity and the go-ahead to improvise in order to be able to deliver the packages. Drivers always put their keys in the same place, they close the doors the same way, they wear the uniforms the same way, but in terms of what they are doing, they have permission and are encouraged to improvise. And so if there's a snowstorm somewhere, they have permission to be able to get together, especially for the people that are impacted by the snowstorm, and come up with ways of overcoming the challenges that they have together and do whatever it takes to deliver those packages on time. Resilience is also about adopting of new ways of doing things. And I've never disinfected so much ever before in my life. And this is actually an opportunity to shift completely. And so design thinking gives you what's required to be courageous and pivot to the new opportunities. It isn't about acting on a whim. Through design thinking, you have data that suggests where you need to go. And the data is gathered from understanding your end users. And so the more you understand your users, the more data that you have to be able to determine where you need to go next, where you need to pivot to. And so in terms of understanding when and where to pivot to, as priorities have changed, you probably want to make sure that you're pivoting. The priorities shifting is a signal to pivot. And so whether it's doing things in a different way, whether it's doing something completely different, whether it's serving different clients, design thinking and empathizing is going to let you know when and where to pivot to, and know where to pivot to by understanding the end clients and the shifts in priorities. And so when I think about grocery shopping right now, the role of a security guard has shifted immensely. And so it's no longer about preventing theft. You see them at the front door with the hand sanitizers and the masks if you need it, and making sure that people are staying 6 feet apart. Within government too, there's been a lot of pivots. The CERB program, it was implemented and released really quickly through CRA, which is amazing. And then they've made changes along the way as time progressed and make it even better and better. And so what we're doing has shifted. And so think about what you're doing in your life and in your work environment. Understand that the priorities have changed, to understand what they've changed to, and then figure out where you need to pivot to. So one other question I have for you guys is, what can you improvise, prototype, test, and experiment with? Whether it's in your home, in your life, in your work environment, think about how you can improvise, prototype, test, and experiment with. Oftentimes, we're actually doing a lot of experimentation unintentionally without knowing it. And it really helps out to pull back and think about what results that you got from the prototype, from the testing, from the experimentation, from the improvisation, to see if it's a good fit or to see if you need to do something different going forward. So I've chatted a lot about design thinking too in terms of resilience. The basic definition of design thinking that we use is design thinking is about understanding your end users' needs better in order to discover what their real problems are. And when we say end user, we're talking about, it could be yourself. And so applying design thinking to yourself in terms of understanding yourself better, defining what the problems you have are, coming up with prototypes for your life, and then testing them out. Or an end user could be internal to the organization, within your team, with other government departments, with citizens, businesses, nonprofits. An end user can be so many different things. It's basically the person that's going to be using the product, process, policy that you're developing. And then it's a lot about adapting and embracing to our new reality. So design thinking is more important than ever. Your clients have changed, and so everything has to be reevaluated. And empathy has now become the new normal. And so your understanding of your end clients needs to change. For design thinking, within Spring2 Innovation, we have 7 phases, starting out with the initial problem, coming up with the measures of success, and then empathizing, understanding who our end clients are and getting to know them better, getting into their mental models so that we can understand their fears. And once we understand that, we can define what the goals are, what is the challenge that we want to solve, come up with ideas, and then improvise or pivot depending on what we want to do. And so as you guys are thinking about building resilience, design thinking is automatically going to help you develop some of the tools that you need for resiliency. And so as we're emerging from the current environment, make sure that you understand how things have changed, and then think about what is it that we want to overcome, and what is it that we want to achieve? What are our goals? What is your mindset? What are your fears? How can you shift? How can you pivot? And then recognize successes along the way, as well as recognizing past successes and thinking about how you've overcome them. And then finally, as we're moving forward, how can you make meaning of the hardships that we're going through? There's a reason why we're going through this. And so how can you make meaning of it? And then how can you help you become more resilient? So as we're closing off, I want to remind you guys, in order to be able to build resilience, think about starting small and then getting bigger and bigger in terms of the fears that you're overcoming. And make sure that you understand that it takes courage. And so whatever it takes for you to build up courage, try to build up as much courage as you can as you're overcoming some of the challenges that we have right now. Look for support all around. And so whether it's the lifeguard or whether it's mentors, friends, leaders, coworkers, look for support all around you. And when you ask for support, it's really surprising how willing people are to help support you. And sometimes it's not in our own organization. Sometimes it's in other organizations. And then think about, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Who are the people that you're trying to impact? And then think about improvising. And so what can you do that you didn't do before? Prototype, test, experiment, and then finally celebrate the successes along the way. And so with that, I want to close off by saying that make sure that you think about the courage to understand the mental framing that you have, and develop that growth mindset to keep trying. If you want to hear more about design thinking, watch our TED Talk on design thinking. And just a reminder that we have 1-day design thinking training, as well as a 5-day design thinking certification program. We have our next cohort of design thinking certification is starting in mid-July if you're interested. And if you want to contact us through our website, through Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, super happy to talk. And with that, I'm actually going to open it up for some questions. And so what are some questions that folks have had? Feel free to write in the chat, and then I'll try to address as many of the questions as possible. And if we can't get to the questions, then I'll make sure that we try to contact you in a different way. And so do you guys have any questions around resiliency, around fear, courage, design thinking, empathizing? Feel free to write it in the chat. So we have our first question. It says, how can we use design thinking to speed up policy development? So really great question. And so the first thing that I would say in terms of policy development is understand who are the people that you're creating the policy for. Go out and talk to them, understand what's really important to them, and also have in mind, what are you trying to do? What are your measures of success? What do you want the policy to do? How will you know that the policy has been successful? And then once you understand who you're creating the policy for, and what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what are their goals, values, challenges, fears, and what are their expectations? And then from there, you can better define what that group needs in order to be able to come up with ideas on how to develop the policy. And then prototype and test different versions of the policy too, to see how the end users are interpreting it, what parts they like, what parts they don't like, what parts they have questions around. And then if you find that there's still more questions at the end of a design thinking sprint, then please go back and try once again and reconsider, what do your end clients want? What do the people that you're creating the policy for want? And so there's a question here on how can we help adopt design thinking if upper levels are resistant? And so that's a really great question. And one of the things that we do is, especially within the 5-day certification, is help people understand how they can sell innovation internally within organizations. And just with a couple minutes that we have in the Q&A, my recommendation for selling design thinking adoption in organizations is twofold. One is to help people understand that things have changed and we can no longer do things the same way that we've been doing or in the same time frame. We can't take months to do stuff. People are looking for us to come up with results right now, with policy changes, with service changes. And so we can't keep doing things the way that we've been doing before. And the second component of it is, what are the values of the organization? What are the values of your leaders? And then tie back what you're doing to the values of the organization and the leaders. And if your end users' values have shifted, then also bring that to the attention of your senior executives too, because that's a huge indicator that you need to pivot and you need to be able to pivot quickly. And the best way to do that, especially with the type of work you guys are doing, it's very human-centric. It's all about people. And so how can you bring it back to the people that you're serving? Even if you're an IT organization, it's still about the people that you're trying to serve. And you need to understand their needs better in order to be able to deliver the services that they need. We don't actually have as many resources as before. And so design thinking helps you understand, how do you use the resources that you have right now in a better way to deliver what the end client's looking for? We don't have the room or the capacity for extras anymore. And so how can you determine exactly what they need and the way that they need it, and then do it quickly? And design thinking is huge for helping out with that. There's also questions on how can you help your team embrace change better? What if they have a fixed mindset? And so in terms of helping your team embrace change better, there's a number of things that you can do for that. So within organizations, first of all, even recognizing that things have changed, and there's an opportunity right now to create a better future and to be able to create that better future together. So recognizing that there's a change is the first #1 part of it. And then another thing that really helps out with change too within organizations and helping people embrace change is helping them understand that they can impact and influence that change. If they're part of co-creating that future together, they're more likely to be on board and be able to create the future that they want. Oftentimes, change is pushed upon us, and that's the part that we don't like. And so if you think about even if you have to buy a new car because your car broke down, that's a change that's being imposed on you. Whereas if you have a car that's working all right, but you want a new car, there's a lot more excitement about it. There's excitement around it. Whereas if it's imposed on you, there's a fear component of it. And if you're bringing in change, understanding what the fear that people have are, that the changes that is being imposed on them, to help them overcome the fear around that change too. There's a lot of emotions around change, especially when so much is happening all at the same time. And that's one of the things that we do, is help organizations and people understand all the changes that are going on, and then how do you switch over to that growth mindset. And the design thinking process naturally helps out with that too, is because we want to create multiple prototypes and learn from people's reactions and behaviors to the prototypes that we're creating. And so it's not about proving whether or not something is right. It's about learning from your end users. I hope that helps. So another question we have is that I'm not sure I understand. There's a question around students that and what they're looking for. Yeah, if whoever had that question, if you could be a little bit more specific, that might help me answer the question too. The thing about the current environment that we're living in, it is a super great opportunity to be able to change the way that things have been done. And so because the traditional methods aren't working, or aren't fast enough, this is an opportunity to pull back and think about how can we do things better. And so there's also some questions around how can we prevent fatigue from setting in and staying motivated and focused. And that's really good too. I think we're all challenged by that. I personally am as well too. And so with a growth mindset, there's so much change going on. There's constantly thinking about how you can adapt. And with that, there does come fatigue. And so it's really important to pull back and take a look at our successes from the past to understand how we've overcome it. I personally take breaks when I do need them to. And so if I have a time where I'm feeling extremely fatigued, I try to take a little bit more of a break and then come back with a fresh mindset too. And it doesn't have to be very long, just changing your environment up a little bit. And I know that's really hard right now. Or even changing up what you're doing with your body. So going out for a quick walk or just sitting in the sunshine for a couple minutes and then coming back really helps out in terms of being able to change your mindset and then go back to what's the goal that you're trying to achieve too and why. And so a lot of this goes back to why are you doing what you're doing and reminding yourself of that. And so for me personally, I love helping out people and organizations see things from different perspectives. And that keeps me going and that keeps me motivated too. And then seeing the impact that it has. And so then celebrating the small successes along the way. There's another question here is how can we use design thinking to help organizations navigate the current context, the new normal, just recovery, anti-racism, that calls for action. And so, yeah, so in terms of navigating the current context that we're in, all of those things are about people. And so when we look at the current methodologies that we have in place, whether it's agile, lean, project management, they're all about the process more than the people itself. Change management has a people perspective of it, and change management is usually used when you already have something in mind, a solution in mind, whereas design thinking is used when you don't know what to do or you don't have a set solution in mind. And so as we're trying to adapt to the new normal, we don't know what we want to create. It really helps organizations understand what people would like to have in place. And same with all the racism that has really come to the forefront and the anti-racism too is how can we adapt to this? How can we understand things better? And it's about looking at things from a people perspective. And so what are all the people thinking, feeling? What are their fears? What are their challenges around this? What are their goals? What are their values? And then getting each other to understand it from one another's perspective in order to be able to move forward. And then there's another question in here on the students' question is, how can we find a way to adapt drama and dance classes for virtual format using design thinking to develop a new program, perhaps? Okay, that's a really good question. And so I've actually had friends that are taking dance classes. Well, their children are taking the dance classes, and they've been able to adapt it to the online format as they go along. And so trying things out in shorter format and then seeing how it works. And every time is a prototype. And so understanding what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then adapting from that too. And so being open to that experimentation component of it. And then there's another question here too is, where's a good place to start if you want to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? And so I think a really good place to start is just even the recognition component of it, is recognizing when and where you have a fixed mindset, because sometimes we can have fixed mindsets in certain parts of our lives and growth mindset in other parts. And just to give you an example, some people in the organizations that they volunteer with sometimes have more of a growth mindset than they might at work, or more of a fixed mindset when it comes to their kids. There's a good chance that you have a growth mindset in parts of your lives. And so understanding where it's fixed and understanding where it's growth helps out. And then the first thing I would say beyond that is to think of opportunities to learn from your experiences. And so even if it's a success or a failure, what can you learn from the experience? And always think about, well, what did I learn today? What did I learn from this initiative? what did I learn from this interaction? And so I always try to ask myself, well, what did I learn today? And if things didn't go well, what did I learn from this experience so that I can make it better the next time through? And then we have another question too. Even with the growth mindset, with so much change, how do we prevent fatigue from setting in and staying motivated and focused? And I think we chatted a little bit about that too, is taking some breaks along the way, and then remembering that you have been successful in the past, and remembering how you overcame challenges in the past so that you can continue to become successful going forward into the future. And you know what, it's not that we need to have things done today. There's going to be a lot of changes going forward. And so you want to make sure that you're maintaining your energy levels and always thinking about what's your goal and how does it relate to people. Who are the people you're trying to serve and the impact that you're trying to have? And so if you have the people that you're trying to serve at the top of your mind too, and coming back to why you do what you do, I find that increases motivation and energy levels for me and a lot of the people around us. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the people that we're working with understand things from different perspectives and can see opportunities, whether it's to pivot, to reframe, see things from different perspectives and see things in a way that they feel unlimited, and so that they can be more unlimited in their lives, in their personal lives, as well as in their work lives. And so think about what you're trying to do, and think about the different perspectives that you're gathering, and then how can that shift your perspective of things. And I think that's it for questions. Again, if you had a question and we didn't get to it, or if you have questions after the session, please feel free to reach out to us through the website, through Twitter, Spring2Inno, or our Facebook or LinkedIn. And for me, myself, personally, Digital Nil on Twitter too. And yeah, please reach out to us. And after a couple days later, you'll actually be getting a link to this webinar if you want to watch it later. Please feel free to do so. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jessica.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you to everyone who was engaging with us through the chat box. A lot of it was directly to the panelists, so you might not all have seen, but we had a lot of questions and a lot of great conversation, which was wonderful. Nilufer already called out our YouTube channel, so you can check out some free content over there. Our design thinking certification program is running in July, so if you're interested in that, please reach out or check it out online. But otherwise, we just want to thank you for joining us today, for taking time out of your schedule, and we hope you'll join us next time. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.